All praise, glory, and honor, Yasharel. We give glory and honor to Yahushua HaMashiach, our Lord, our Savior, and our Redeemer. I'm going to jump right into it today, family. I got my Yorkie sitting beside me today. He's a little bit scared here. He's going to be keeping me a little bit of company today, looking all crazy. We got some thunder going on around here. He gets a little bit nervous. But I'm going to jump right into this, Yasharel. Brothers and sisters, I want to get into this teaching today. I got a lot of reading and a lot to cover, but I want to let you know right off the bat that this teaching is being birthed out of my spirit because I was on a social media site here recently the other day, LinkedIn, doing some work on there, and a brother that is a movie producer, he came on there and he began to show a picture of a black young Jesus with braids, a movie that he is about to produce called Jesus. And I made the statement to him and told him that movie looks more in line to what the real Jesus, Yahusha, looked like. And I also had a lot of feedback. People came on there, and Christians mainly, talking about, well, Christ's color does not matter. It's only about the blood. That's all that matters. Christ had no color. He was neither black nor white. And Christ is a spirit. Everything else like this, just talking off the wall crazy. So these are our own people, our own brothers and sisters that are coming at us. And this was an Israelite brother who's most likely just doesn't have the knowledge. I'm trying to be very respectful and nice here, brothers and sisters, because you have a lot of our people that are house Negroes. They love the white Jesus. They love Christianity, what they were told Christianity was, handed down from our slave masters. So no, anytime I talk about Christianity, I'm talking about it from the Christianity that was given to us as a black people, as a race of people, from our slave masters, referring to a white Jesus that never existed. So when I refer to a white Jesus, that is the Christianity that I'm talking about that was passed down to us from our slave masters. So that's why I'm teaching this message, because I'm tired of the ignorance. I'm tired of people saying color does not matter. Color isn't even in the Bible. Christ had no color. I mean, come on, let's use a little self-autonomy. Let's use a little bit of common sense. We know that Yahusha came from a line. He came from a family lineage. He came from a history. His genealogy, it is detailed in the scriptures. He came from a tribe. Yes, certainly he had to have a color, an ethnicity. He had to have a nationality. So we're going to deal with all of this and break this ignorance down. For my new people coming on, I hope this strengthens you and the faith even more. Those of you whose eyes are just being awoken and awakened and coming out of Christianity, coming into the truth. And to you, my brothers and sisters, Yasharel, you already have been in this truth, rooted and grounded. Hopefully this word will settle and establish you and root you and ground you even more. For this work that we are doing today, I'm going to be using basically 4 books. I'm going to be using Undeniable. This is by Dante Fortson. You guys need to get this book. This is a full color evidence of black Israelites in the Bible. I'm not going to be showing this book too much because I want this brother to get paid. This brother needs to get his money for the work that he has done in this book. And this brother, I appreciate Dante Fortson because he's just like me. He was a young minister, young man coming up, and he began to always study the Bible and wonder how come black people were not seen in the Bible anywhere. It was always white pictures of Jesus, white apostles, white prophets, white disciples. So he wrote this book, and it was birthed in his spirit as he began to study and do a quest on the color black in the Bible. Seeing what colors were in the Bible and were we represented as a race of people in the Bible. So I will be using Dante Fortson's book, Undeniable. If you don't have that book, you need to get that book. Support our brother. support our own. And that's the problem with Yasharel today. We got all the other Edomites and people out there that will support their people, but we don't support our own. I think I only paid about maybe $20 or so for this book, maybe cheaper than that. I'm not sure. I got it off Amazon. Go on Amazon, support this brother and get his book. Also, I'm going to be using, this is a very formidable book. When it comes down to study, you need to have this Babylon, From Babylon to Timbuktu. This is by Rudolph R. Windsor, and we are using scholarly level work here. Dante Fortson, he's a great scholar in his field. Rudolph R. Windsor, he's a great scholar in his field. So we're going to be taking excerpts from this book, reading on this. Also, I'm going to be using Elijah J. Israel, Into Egypt Again with Ships. This is a very good book, very educational, very good sources in here. You've got to read more than just the Bible. You've got to read more than just the King James Version, the Sefer. You've got to do study. You've got to do history. You've got to overturn, and look at everything. So again, I'm going to be using Into Egypt Again with Ships by the author Elijah J. Israel. So we're going to jump right into this. And what I'm going to be dealing with first, because I'm going to try to take my time with this so I can break this down and leave no stone unturned when it comes down to this, so I can, like I said, put a stop to this ignorant behavior that's being said and told, this ignorant knowledge that Christ had no color, and color isn't even listed in the Bible. I'm getting a little tongue twister there. So I'm going to be talking first from this book. We're going to be using Babylon, From Babylon to Timbuktu, and we're talking about how the Bible starts off. First of all, is in the book of Genesis. When the Bible starts off in the book of beginnings, the Bereshit, we begin to see Africa, Northeast Africa. We began to see the Garden of Eden, and it has been said from some that maybe the Garden of Eden is in Jerusalem, Ethiopia. But I know one thing that we do all agree on, that the Garden of Eden is located in Africa, where we have the four rivers, the Pison, the Gihon, the Hiddekel, and the Euphrates River. So from there, I'm going to start reading. European civilization developed from ancient black civilization. So in other words, the European culture, the white race would not have what they have if it was not for the ancient black civilization. Without this black civilization, white domination and influence as we know it today would have been improbable. This area was also the location of the Garden of Eden, and the people of this region were jet black. So here we are taking a look at what the Bible starts off in the book of Bereshit, in the book of Genesis. We see here God forming a man out of the dust of the ground whose name is Adam. Adam means son of the red earth, and his color was ruddy. It also means ruddy. And I will show pictures and descriptions jumping up of what ruddy looks like. So first of all, we have the creator, Yahuwah, Elohim, how he takes a scoop of dirt, and we know dirt from the ground is not white. So therefore, we are not starting off with a white race of people, but we are starting off with a colored people. A people that had pigmentation, that had some type of melanin in them to bring forth a color of the skin. Because here, as I said, the name Adam means son of the red earth. It also means ruddy. And we see a description of what ruddy looks like. Ruddy looks like a mahogany color. So we start off in Northeast Africa in the Garden of Eden with four rivers, the Pison River, the Gihon River, the Hiddekel River, and the Euphrates River, which is all encompassed around Ethiopia. Here you have Africa, which has 54 countries in Africa, and the climate there also being very hot. When you talk about this man, Adam, that God created, you know, our Father Yahuwah, he does everything perfect. He does everything in balance to put these people in this very hot climate with the sun. He gave them a skin protection. He gave them melanin, because we know that the white race, the Europeans, would not have survived over here because there was no suntan lotion back then. I began to do research and a study and found out that because black people have melanin, which is we have a 13.4 protection rate from the sun than whites, which have a 3.4 protection rate from the sun. So God already gave us a barrier against the sun in our skin to keep us from being burnt up. And in this study, they said that white people are more prone to getting skin cancer than blacks. So number one, we see right there, there was no way possible that the Europeans or the white man could have been formed first here, there in Northeast Africa, and even dealing with the climate and the sun of that day, because his body was not built for it. So God, Yahuwah, our Father, does everything in balance and in excellence. When he made man with melanin. He made us with a protection, a barrier from the sun and getting this skin cancer. And I'm not saying that black people in general cannot get skin cancer, but I'm saying we have a very high rate of tolerance, more than the Caucasians do. All right, so stay with me there. So here it says, without this black civilization, white domination influence as we know it today would have been improbable. And see, when we really get down to it, brothers and sisters, it's like this. The reason why we're dealing with white superiority, and my Gentile brothers and sisters, those of you that listen to me, I'm not coming against, this is not a hate speech or anything else like this. People think when we talk about our identity and our nationality and who we are, that we are bringing a hate speech on. The only people that get mad at me are racist people who try to flaunt their white superiority. They are the only people that get upset with me here, because if you really look at it, all of this is about who's going to be on top. It is a power struggle when it comes down to race. And the whites knew this. Everything I'm talking about, who was the first man, I've got different things I'm going to show you dealing with Adam, my brother here, Pastor Kelly Richardson. He did an excellent job when it comes down to the We Woke channel. He showed a description in the video. I believe that was coming from the History channel of Adam, them finding Adam and what Adam may have looked like, as you see in this description, this picture below. Adam being a man of color, Adam being a man of complexion with melanin in his skin. Scientists even had to go back and form the looks of Adam, going by his Y genes and the chromosomes and everything else like that, and finding out that this is the way Adam may have looked. So we see that God on purpose took a scoop of dirt out of the ground and he formed man, and he made Adam, which is the red man. He's the son of the red earth, and that's where we get ruddy from. So it says this area was also the location of the Garden of Eden, the Mother Earth, the Mother Africa. Africa, as I posted here, you'll see a picture of Africa. It has all kind of gold, cotton, oil. Africa produces just so much diamonds. Everything is in Africa, and that's why Africa is being pillaged and colonized and plundered under the hand of Esau. They are taking all of the wealth and the riches out of Africa, and they are using it in other places around the world. Even rubber trees that are very adequate there in Africa, they take those rubber from the rubber trees, and you have your tires, BF Goodrich, Michelin, Firestone. They're getting that rubber from the rubber trees over here in Africa, because when God made Adam and he placed him in the Garden of Eden, he gave him everything that he needed to survive and abundance. I mean, he gave them so many riches, gold, silver. This land had anything that you can think of. It was the land of wealth and prosperity. So it says here, this area was also the location of the Garden of Eden, and the people of this region were jet black. And we knew because the sun has kissed these people. These people have been kissed with the sun beaming down upon them would give them a darker hue, a darker complexion. And like I said, you couldn't survive this climate unless you had some kind of barrier against the sun's rays and its ultraviolet rays in this climate. It says, I shall prove conclusively that the black people have the most ancient history of all humans. The best available source of proof is the history of the Jews, known as the Bible. And the Bible, I will also be using my King James Version Bible. The Bible is also a very notable book. It is our true source that we go to for all things. And this title of the teaching of this message, I am proving that the Bible is a black man's history book. You know, for sake, I'm going to say black because I'm going to have a lot of people listening to this video, but we are identified by our nationality, which is an Israelite. That is who we are as a people. And I will show you as we go further into our study here that the Bible didn't deal with color. It is because of this Western American mindset we get into whites and Caucasoids, and we get into Negro, Negroid features, Mongoloid, and we describe people based on the color or the complexion of their skin. Whereas the Bible did not do that. The Bible described nations by their nationalities. Shemites, Hamites, Japhites, it described them, Canaanites, all by their nationality, not by the color of the skin. But it is noteworthy, the Bible does talk about the color of the skin, which most of these Christian people do not talk about. So he says that I shall prove conclusively that the black people have the most ancient history of all humans. The best available source of proof is the history of the Jews, known as the Bible. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 10, as it is written, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. There were 4 rivers which watered the Garden of Eden, and we already named those rivers, which were Pison, Gihon, Hiddekel, and the Euphrates River. Because the Garden of Eden is associated with the land of Ethiopia, and I did have a brother, one of my subscribers, send me a message in the channel, and he asked me about Ethiopia. Could it be possible that Ethiopia could be the place for the Garden of Eden's location? And yes, it is very possible. But like I said, I've heard people teach and talk about Jerusalem being the place, Ethiopia being the place for the Garden of Eden. But one thing we can all be sure and rest assured about is the Garden of Eden is located in Africa, Northeast Africa. And it says, because the Garden of Eden is associated with the land of Ethiopia, we can conclude that the people there were black. All right. I got something else I want to pick up here, also dealing with that before we jump into that. This is the reason why we need to know our history as a black people. Pastor Kelly, he did such an excellent job on his We Woke Now channel. He stood outside. I think he went to a Black Lives Matter meeting, and while he was there, he began to ask the people in the audience, you know, he said, once I say a state, you name the people who goes along with it. So when he said China or Chinese, the people said China. When he said Russia, the people said Russians, you know, they live there. And when he said Germany, the people said German. But when he said black, there was no association. There was no nationality. We don't even have a flag to represent us. But everybody else, if you have any Spanish influence in you whatsoever at all, you know you came from Spain. If you're an Ethiopian, you know you came from Ethiopia. If you're an African, you know you came from Africa. So everybody has their nationality to identify them and who they are. Like I have a lot of guys I know, they say, well, I have a little bit of Portuguese in me. So we know they go back to Portugal. But when you deal with black people, what nationality can we claim as a whole, as a people? Like every other ethnicity, every other race of people, and they have a flag, but we do not have a flag to represent who we are as a people. So let me read a little bit here out of Into Egypt Again with Ships by Elijah J. Israel. What separates Negroes, blacks, or African Americans from all the other sons of Adam is that all Adam's sons have a sense of national identity. An Italian knows that he is an Italian, and the German knows that he is a German. He can trace his roots, but the black man or woman living in America is a product of the curse of slavery, has no true sense of national identity, and no true sense of self. If an individual does not know who he is or from where he derived, how can he progress forward effectively? This is the dilemma for the so-called African American. And this is my job, brothers and sisters. I give honor to all the other ministries out there, to Teo Ministry, to Dante Fortson Ministries, to my brother J.B. Zion doing an excellent job. His channel is growing in numbers every day, which is showing me that there is an awakening going on with the Israelite community. To my brother Pastor Kelly, We Woke Now channel, and many other channels out there. This is just a list of a few of some of the good channels out there, and that even me. God is even using me in this day and time to be a voice to speak where these preachers, and I got a lot of names in my head I want to call some of these pork chop eating pastors, where they want to deny our history. They want to deny us as a people. And you see, when you get into this, this is why I stand up and I love Yasharel. I love my people, is because we have to have a self-worth of identity. The color is all about self-identification. It is not about saying black is better than white, or white is better than black, or being Spaniard is better than all these other races, or German or Philippine, or whatever it is. I'm not saying that. What we are doing, we are not a hate cult. We are not a hate group. All we are doing is identifying with our nationality, which has been stolen from us because the nations have conspired to come together and say, let's cut Israel off as being a nation from knowing their heritage and who they are as a people. So when you have ministries like I just listed and named stand up for who we are as a people, they are doing a great work. When you have these notable preachers as T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, and these other black big Jamal Bryant, these other big mega churches out there, and the black people are sitting there and they don't know who they are. They're being hyped up with a bunch of, this is your time, this is your season, this is your moment, money, money, money cometh here and there, prosperity, you're going to get $1 million in 2 weeks, and 3 weeks you're going to be blessed with this, that, and the other. See, we are bringing identification to our people, which is more valuable than silver, gold, money, or what have you. So our people who have been torn down through the ages and the years of time, being talked about with our woolly hair, with our broad noses, our thick lips, our jet black skin. We have been talked about. We have been demeaned. We have been put down. So this is why James Brown and these other singers have to come out with songs, I'm black and I'm proud, to lift our people up. This is why these different magazines, Ebony had to come forth to show that we have beautiful people. Jet magazine, when they show these swimsuit edition and models in there, to show we are black and a beautiful people. Everything came by us. You don't have the white civilization unless it was for us. Everything derived from us when it came down to science, when it came down to art, when it came down to linguistics, language, culture. Everything comes from us. And white superiority has tried to hide this all of these years because they did not want us on top. They start talking about slavery. This is when we start dealing with our history is picking cotton. They don't want to go back to when we were kings and queens and princes and priests. They don't want to deal with our lineage. They don't want to deal with who we are as a people. We come from a lineage and a genealogy and a line of royalty, but they want to hide that from us. All right. I don't want to get too deep off into the subject because I can go a whole lot of places with this. But this is what this white superiority and racism is all about. It is about hiding the scientists and the black people that have contributed to a lot, to the archaeology, to the architecture, to the things that we're using today. Elevators. All you hear about in Black History Month is the man that made peanuts or potato chips. You know, but we gave a lot. We have given ourselves, we have given a lot of the knowledge of ourselves to this culture, to these people. These people have everything off of our backs. We built it. We are the cradle of civilization. Give yourself a hands, brothers and sisters, because you are the ones. You deserve some praise. You deserve some glory and some honor because you are God's creation and God has blessed you to be a people above all people of the lands, the nations, and the earth. All right. So it says, but the black man or woman living in America as a product of the cursed slavery has no true sense of a national identity. So this is the dilemma for the so-called African American that we have today. So if we talk about if most people are asked the question, where is Israel today? The answer most likely will be that Israel lies in the Middle East. However, what people today refer to as the Middle East was more accurately referred to as Northeast Africa. See, they took this word Middle East, which is a terminology which is new and just developed here over the last couple of years. They have taken this word to throw people off from saying Northeast Africa, where Israel dwells at, not the Middle East. See, and he begins to say here, however, what people today refer to as the Middle East was more accurately referred to as Northeast Africa before the building of the Suez Canal. So when you open up the Bible in the book of Genesis, some of the first places you see mentioned are Mesopotamia, Egypt, you're going to get into Bethlehem. You're going to get into Niger or Niger in the book of Acts. We're going to deal with Israel. You're going to deal with Jerusalem. And all of these places are located in Africa. Africa having 54 countries on that landmass, that continent there. Africa is a very huge continent. So this is what you get into here. All of these places, and you're dealing with black people, jet black people. When you deal with Egyptians, Egyptians were black people. I'm going to show you that. But everything has been whitewashed from our history. When they show you all of these movies, Charlton Heston on TV, dealing with Moses, dealing with Egyptians, they always show Egyptians as white. They show Jesus as white. They show the Israelites as white. Only time they want to show black is when it's dealing with slaves. That's the only position we can fulfill. But when you deal with Mesopotamia, when you deal with Egypt, when you deal with this is where our father Abraham was born at, in the land of You're dealing with Bethlehem in Israel. You are dealing with blacks. You're not dealing with white people here. This is a cover-up. This is an identity crisis. This is an identity theft. We are the greatest number of people on the earth that have suffered an identity crisis. We have identity theft. Our identity has been stolen from us. So he begins to go and say here that Northeast Africa before the building of the Suez Canal. Okay, they built that little split there to divide Northeast Africa from the rest. But see, that all sits on the tectonic plate of Africa. Israel sits on the tectonic plate of Africa. They have archaeology, they have geography, and they have maps that show Israel sits on the tectonic plate of Africa. So Israel is a part of Africa. So we see here, the more we read, the more we show the hand of the enemy. The Suez Canal has extracted Middle Eastern countries from the African continent, among them the nation of Israel. This land separation, along with a mental separation inspired by erroneous terms such as Middle East, has altered the way most individuals view not only countries such as Egypt, but Israel as well. Excuse me. So this Middle East term was to throw you off from Northeast Africa and Israel, where they sit at and where these lands are. So it says, consequently, when one thinks of the Middle East, the fact that these lands were originally inhabited by peoples of African descent does not enter into the mind. So yeah, when you say Middle East, people automatically assume and think of Arabs. They think of olive-skinned people. So furthermore, when the seed of racism was added to this misleading view of Africa, the absurd notion that the original Egyptians were not black Africans was born. So this is what people think when they hear of Middle Eastern. And I also hear this a lot when it comes down to Yahusha. They say that Yahusha, oh, he was Middle Eastern. He was olive skin. I've only seen two types of olives. You've either got a black olive or either you got that green olive, that green complexioned olive. And I haven't seen any olive green people. So you either, that's the only two you got right there. So they always try to throw Jesus into he was olive skin because of the Middle East. But if you really knew how to study and look into geography, you would see Israel, where Jesus was born and raised and came up at, was in Northeast Africa. But they do subterfuge to fool you because they don't want you knowing the truth of where Yahusha came from, Northeast Africa. To truly understand this flawed logic, only one needs to consider God's promise to Abraham. And you see, this is a flawed logic that is being taught by our Christian Pentecostal churches, the Catholic Universal Church as a whole. And when I say Catholicism, I'm speaking of universal. All of these Protestant churches that come out of Catholicism. I'm speaking of Baptist, Church of God in Christ. I'm speaking of evangelicals. I'm speaking of all of these different religions that come out of Catholicism. You protested the Catholic Church, but you're still part of the Catholic Church. So we have here, to truly understand this flawed logic, only one needs to consider God's promise to Abraham. What was God's promise to Abraham? Let's look. The Lord told Abraham to leave his country and journey into a land that God would reveal unto him. God tells Abraham to leave his country, leave Ur. I want you to leave. And he promised Abraham that he would make his seed a great and a blessed nation. When he reached the promised land, the Lord told him, unto thy seed will I give this land. The land that God promised Abraham and his seed was the land of Canaan. Now, when we do a further study, we will find out and we will see that Ham is the father of these people of Canaan. We will see that Ham is the progenitor when it comes down to the Africans, when it comes down to the Egyptians, when it comes down to the Libyans, the Somalians, of the darker races, but not the Negroes. And your Zondervan Dictionary Bible even tells you that Ham is not the progenitor or the father of the Negroes, the black race, the Shemites. All right? And we're going to go into that. I don't want to jump ahead. Excuse me. So it says that the land that God promised Abraham and his seed was the land of Canaan. And that land, Canaan, flowing with milk and honey, was the land of Israel. It was going to have abundance. It was going to have wealth. It was going to be fertile. And that is why the Garden of Eden is located over in Africa, Ethiopia, with the 4 rivers coming out, because it was a fertile crescent land. It was rich in abundance. It was rich in nutrients and diamonds and supplies. Whatever was needed, God gave an abundance of wealth there to that land. So it says that Canaan, the individual whom the land was named after. See, when these patriarchs had sons, they named their lands after them. So Canaan named his land after him, Canaan. Mizraim, where he is the father of Egypt. Mizraim is the father of Egypt, the Egyptians. And his father is Ham. He is the progenitor of all of these dark race people, but not the Negroes. So it says, the fact that Israel is a part of Africa is imperative because it aids in proving that Israel was one black nation among other black nations. So we need that. This is what color is for, brothers and sisters. Those of you that get on here and you fight, color isn't necessary. After the Renaissance period, after Leonardo da Vinci, after Michelangelo, all of these, Michelangelo, all of these artists, they did their work, their paintings, and they changed, and they were commissioned by the religious system, by the Catholic Church, to paint the image and the likeness of themselves, even where the Bible tells us that the heathen sought to paint their own images and their likeness. They took all of these ancient pictures that Russia has, that Africa has, that Ethiopia has, of a black-skinned Jesus, Yahusha. They took a black-skinned apostle, the apostles, the prophets, the disciples, and they whitewashed that entire Bible, and they made them all Europeans. They made them all white. That is what color is for. It is to identify. And see, I hear the church saying, well, we're not ignorant. We know that Christ was a black man. We know that Christ wasn't white. Yes, you are still ignorant, because you acknowledge that Christ is a black man, but yet and still you think those people that are living in Israel today, in Yasharel, those Ashkenazi Jews, you think they are the people of God, and they are not, because you are still deceived and you have a spirit of deception upon you. How can you know that Christ was a black man, but then deal with his descendants, the Israelites, and then say, well, we're not descendants of Israel. We're not black. But those people living in Israel, the Ashkenazi Jews, Jewish people, they are the ones that are the descendants of Shem. They come from the line of Shem. They come from Jesus. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. Either Yahusha is black and his descendants, Israel, the Israelites, they are a black people, or either Yahusha, as you all say, he's black, but the chosen people are those people in Israel right now, the Ashkenazi Jews. It just doesn't line up. It does not make sense. So that is what identification is for, as we get into that. All right. So we talked about Adam. We talked about Abraham. Abraham is a black man. Abraham comes up in Mesopotamia and Africa. And Abraham, you have all of these different things. You have Moses. Moses was born in Egypt. Moses was born in Egypt to Hebrew parents. Moses was mistaken for being an Egyptian. Why was Moses mistaken for being an Egyptian? Is because their color was very similar. The color of an Egyptian and the color of an Israelite, which Moses was very close. So he was mistaken. And Moses was married to an Egyptian woman named Zipporah, a black woman from Ham, his sons. All right. So we see that there. Not white. You're not seeing white anywhere in this at all. We see that Joseph, he was an Israelite and he was mistaken for an Egyptian. Joseph is the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. And we see that his brothers didn't even recognize him. After his brothers sold him to a caravan of Arabs that were on their way to Egypt, and then God blessed Joseph and he raised up to the higher heights and ranked there in Egypt, and he became governor and everything else. And when his brothers come to see him because there's a famine in the land, Joseph is dressed up in the garb and the wear of Egyptians, and he is even talking the Egyptian talk, linguistics and language and speech, stage to where his brothers did not even recognize him. Joseph recognized his brothers, but because of the Egyptian wear and the clothing he was wearing and the color of his skin, which matched so closely with the Egyptians, now Joseph was an Israelite, but he blended in with the Egyptians. So his brothers was confused, standing right there face to face with their brother Joseph. They didn't even know they were talking to their brother, but Joseph knew it was his brothers. But you see, there was a misidentification because Israelites and Egyptians looked the same. They were close in proximity of color. Even when we get to the New Testament, dealing with Paul, Paul here is mistaken for an Egyptian when he goes to trial. They say to Paul, "Art thou not that Egyptian?" Paul was an Israelite, Roman born, but Paul was an Israelite. But they mistook him for being an Egyptian. All right, I got a little bit more reading I want to do, and we're going to go off into this. Let me see here where I want to pick up. Before I get into that, I'm still dealing with some stuff here. So we're going to move on. And I want to talk about these things very briefly. A lot of good stuff in these books. Let me start off right here. So we see that, I'm going to read this. I said, because the Garden of Eden is associated with the land of Ethiopia, we can conclude that the people there were black. Also, the land of Ur of the Chaldees was located at the southern part of the Euphrates. The Chaldeans were one of the many Cushite tribes. Cush means black. So you see that? People back then in biblical days, they did not call people white or they did not call people black. People were identified by their nationality, not by the color of their skin. But color played a part, the color of the skin played a part for identification. So I'm going to keep reading here. Cush means black. According to the Bible dictionary, this dictionary defines further Cush, the name of a son of Ham, apparently the eldest. So you see here, this is what the Europeans don't want to tell you, but you've got to study and do your research, that Cush was the name of a son of Ham, and he was the oldest child, the elder. But Cush means black. A lot of people think that we, as African Americans here in the United States, we derive from Ham, who is the father and the progenitor of the Egyptians and also the Africans, but he is not the father when it comes down to the Israelites. Okay, he is not the father. A lot of people think that, but that's not true. We come from the line of Shem, brothers and sisters. So it says this was the most fertile region in the Middle East with so many canals and lakes. No wonder it was called the Garden of Eden, because it was very fertile. So when we get here to this other page, we see that the sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Because the world was populated from those three sons of Noah, it is proper to classify men only according to this classification: Shemites, Hamites, and Japhites, and not Caucasoid, Mongoloid, or Negroid. The latter category is a modern anthropological classification that we will deal with more thoroughly later. The parts of the earth inhabited by the children of Shem were parts of the territory of Assyria and Elam, Persia, east of the Tigris River, the eastern part of Syria, and parts of the Arabian Peninsula. All of the children of Shem were black. This position will be supported by arguments and facts later. The second classification of mankind was the Hamites, who controlled the great centers of civilization in ancient time, 4000 BC, soon after the flood. This civilization included the continent of Africa, the land of Canaan, Israel, parts of Arabia, Syria, Phoenicia, Turkey, Babylonia, southern Persia, which is Iran, East Pakistan, and a large part of India. The third classification of mankind was the Japhites, from Japheth, who was the youngest son of Noah. The offspring of Japheth occupied the Isles of the Gentiles, the shore territories of the Mediterranean Sea in Europe, and parts of Asia Minor, whence they dispersed northward over the entire continent of Europe and a great part of Asia. So we see here we're dealing with three sons of Noah. We're dealing with Shem, we're dealing with Ham, and we're dealing with Japheth. And when we deal with Shem, we get into the Israelites. When we deal with Ham, we're dealing with the Africans. When we deal with Japheth, we are dealing with the Gentiles, the Europeans, mostly the Caucasian race of people. Let's go a little bit deeper into this. The ancient people did not classify race according to skin color. I need to read this again so this can sink in. The ancient people did not classify race according to skin color. Like the modern nations of Europe and America, the ancients, including the Greeks and the Romans, identified people according to their national or tribal names. There were no white people that were in tribes. Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah. Joseph had 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. There are no white people included in those 12 tribes of Israel. I mean, let's teach this right. So it says, they use such names as Visigoths, Vandals, Saxons, Ethiopians, Carthaginians, Jews, Arabs, Persians, Babylonians, Egyptians, and Moors. This is how they broke people down, was internationality. This is this Western mindset mentality where we describe people based on the hue and the color of their skin. Let me read that again. They use such names as Visigoths, Vandals, Saxons, Ethiopians, Carthaginians, Jews, Arabs, Persians, Babylonians, Egyptians, and Moors. They did not use the term Negro, which is a modern term to refer to the black races, or the word Caucasian to refer to the white races. Dividing the world along a color line was an idea that originated with the white supremacists in Europe after the Renaissance. See? All of this took place after the Renaissance period because white people knew that civilization started with the black race of people. Everything started with us, so be proud, black people, of your heritage. But they have stolen our identity. They have stolen all of the products that we have created, everything that we have invented, our inventions, all of these things were stolen and hid from us, even in slavery. You had a lot of black people that made inventions and they were not able to get a patent for that, and the white man took those ideals and stole them, and they got the patent for it, and it became their invention, and it was not their idea. A lot of things were created by black people, but we were not given the proper credit for it. And it was because of white superiority, and also this Renaissance period where everything was whitewashed and changed from black to white. So now you Negroes come on the scene here, you Christian Negroes, you come on the scene and you begin to say, well, color doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is the blood of Yahshua, the blood of Christ. Christ had no color. You talk like a fool when you say things like that. Christ did have a color. Christ had a lineage. Christ had a genealogy. Christ had a people that he came from. So for you to sit here and say Christ was neither black nor white and he had no color, Christ is just a spirit, it makes no sense whatsoever at all. Quit talking that foolishness and that ignorance, my people. All right? So we see here that the Europeans did not have any great civilization immediately after the fall of Greece and Rome. All right. As I have proven, the earliest civilization began in North Africa and the Middle East among the black races. So Africa is the cradle. It is the start of civilization, of culture, of inventions. It comes from us and through us. Let me read this more. You guys will find this very noteworthy here. We have more than adequate proof that the white race began near the Caucasus Mountains, from where they spread north, northwest, and northeast into Europe and Asiatic Russia. Now we know that the Japhites, Europeans, are white today. Were they originally white beginning from their ancestor Japheth, or did a change materialize in the skin color of the descendants of Japheth? This question is difficult to answer. I was told that Japheth was a black man, but he wanted to be white, so God changed him to a white man. Evidence to that theory is lacking. Nevertheless, scientists and anthropologists have found different kinds of mutations in certain parts of the world. Now, I want you to pay attention here as we get into mutations. All right? So it says, nevertheless, scientists and anthropologists have found different kinds of mutations in certain parts of the world. A physical mutation is a sudden variation or change, the offspring differing from its parents and some outstanding characteristic. Also a major change in the chromosomes or genes that determine heredity. Blonde hair among the black Australian Aborigines is an example of a mutation, and probably albinos are a good example of mutation with their white skin, woolly hair, thick lips, and Ethiopian noses. Any sudden change from the normal is to be regarded as a mutation. Other examples of mutations are blondism, or whiteness among monkeys, apes, and chimpanzees. See, the white man has taken everything and flipped it to us to try to demonize us or demean us and make us look bad. We've been called chimpanzees. We've been called apes and gorillas, and we've been called monkeys. But if you cut the hair off of a monkey, a chimpanzee, or an ape, what color is the skin underneath? White. But see, to make you feel bad about yourself and demean you, they called you a monkey. They called you a chimpanzee. They called you an ape. So here it says other examples of mutations are blondism, or whiteness, or among monkeys, apes, and chimpanzees. Major mutations or changes took place among the descendants of Japheth. So here we have these three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who are all black, but for some reason when Japheth begins to go up towards Europe and that colder climate area of the Caucasus Mountains, a mutation began to take place. We have albinoism starting to come out in the skin. We have blondism. We have albinism with blonde hair, and we have these black features. So a mutation begins to take place here. So this is obvious because of their white skin. In other words, they were black at one time, but their skin changed to white. So white is a mutation. Something is off. Nothing is wrong with the black skin, with the melanin. This is the way God created us with this sun barrier. But when we get into this albinoism and we get into this blondism and we get into this woolly hair texture, thick lips, broad noses, but still having this white skin, there was a change. Something took place. So it says this is obvious because of their white skin. In other words, they were black at one time, but their skin changed to white. This phenomenon can be understood in view of the total world population. Over 2/3 of the population of the world consists of colored people. That is a ratio of 2 to 1. 2 out of Noah's 3 sons remained black. We know this to be true because many of the people throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the islands in the Pacific Ocean are yellow, brown, or black. They have facial features like the Congoid Africans, especially the Vietnamese, Filipinos, the people of India. They are a mixture of black Dravidians and Indo-Europeans. Thailanders, Burmese, Indonesians, Guineans, Sumatrans, and the Aborigines of Australia, etc. So you see that? So the white race tries to make the black race feel bad, and the mutation took place with them. It did not take place with us. So the white race is a mutation. Something is off with that gene. It is said that they have a little bit of melanin. They didn't lose all of their melanin. They have a little bit of melanin, but a mutation took place in them. So they just tried to flip the script on us, calling us the apes, the chimpanzees, the monkeys. And like I said, if you get some hair clippers and you cut that skin off of these monkeys and chimpanzees, their skin is white underneath. So they are closer to a monkey, a chimpanzee, and an ape than we are. But we've been dubbed by that name. All right, I'm going to do some more here. I see I'm getting into an hour here with this teaching. This teaching is very deep, very deep. It is a lot to be said on this. Let me read this. I'm dealing with Afro-Asian culture, which goes to Europe. The Sumerians, the Babylonians, and Ethiopians were black people. Some of the oldest civilizations that you have out there, and even white people know this, are the Sumerians. The Sumerians, which Abraham grew up in that culture in that time. The Sumerians, the Babylonians, and the Ethiopians were black people. They were not white-skinned people. Away with all of these movies with the Egyptians looking white. Away with Pharaoh looking like a white man. They don't want to give us the credit that is due us, black people. These were all black-skinned, dark-skinned people. Melanated people. The Sumerians, Babylonians, and Ethiopians were black people. They contributed much to the advancement of civilization because they studied astrology. They were capable of formulating many principles of astronomy. These black people were so sagacious and skillful that they were able to divide the years into months and weeks and hours and minutes and seconds. That's where we got our calendar from. That's where we got our time from. And mathematics, they developed the decimal system. Give us our praise. Give us the glory that is due us, that God has wrought his hand through us as a people. I got a lot to get out here. The Egyptians are Africans. They are descendants of the Hamites. All Hamites are the offspring of their father Ham. The first Egyptian was called Mizraim, according to the Hebrews. This Mizraim was the son of Ham, Genesis 10:6. Ancient and modern scholars have established the location of Mizraim as Egypt. The word Mizraim is a plural form meaning upper and lower Egypt. Do you guys see that? Do you guys understand that? That the Egyptians are Africans and they are the descendants of Hamites. All Hamites are the offspring of their father Ham. So the first Egyptian was called Mizraim. According to the Hebrews, this Mizraim was the son of Ham. So here is a black progenitor, Ham, who produces an offspring by the name of Mizraim. He is also black, which produces the Egyptians, Mizraim. The Egyptians come from the offspring of black people. So don't believe the lies when you see Egypt on TV and they're showing white. This is going a lot into the Sphinx. This is why the nose were shot off. When you look at the Great Sphinx, when you look at the different artifacts, the pyramids and the things that are shown there in Egypt, they knew that these people, the hieroglyphs, they knew that these people were black-skinned people, as you see in the pictures I'm showing here. When you look at the hieroglyphs and you look at the Israelites who are working for the Egyptians because they were in bondage, they were in slavery to this people, and they built the pyramids. And I always hear people wonder why and say, I wonder who built the pyramids. The Israelites built the pyramids. The Israelites under the Egyptians built those pyramids. They did that unto Pharaoh. You have the Great Sphinx. They shot the noses off of all of these monuments and these statues because they saw the thick lips. They saw the wide, broad noses. They saw the features, the Negroid features, and they did not want you to see this is where all of our culture, civilization, this is where all inventions started from, was Egypt. All right? I'm going to move on from there. A lot I can say on that, but I'm going to keep it moving. All right? Originally, all Hamites and Shemites or Semites were black. Abraham was a black Shemite and a descendant of Shem. You see that? Abraham was a black Shemite and a descendant of Shem. Yahusha, as you know as Jesus Christ, he is a Shemite. So now we're getting into lineage. We're getting into genealogy. We're dealing with where did Jesus come from. We can trace his back. I sat recently and I watched a video of about 5 preachers sit at a table, and all of them tried to discuss the color of Jesus, and nobody went into the scriptures to dig into the lineage of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, of who populated the world, to see what line did Jesus come from. Jesus comes from the line of Shem. What did this just say here? Originally, all Hamites and Shemites or Semites were black. Abraham was a black Shemite and a descendant of Shem. The name Abraham was Abram before he was referred to as Abraham. The 3 Hebrew patriarchs were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This Jacob begot 12 sons who later fathered the 12 tribes of Israel. Abraham was the father not only of the Hebrew Israelite nation, but also of the Arab nation. You see that there? He's the father of the Arab nation. So I wanted to point that out to you there. Father of the Arab nation. So when we see that and we go here into the Bible, when you look at this and you get into Genesis chapter 10, and I've taught this before, you can trace the genealogy of everybody in Genesis chapter 10. And I'm going to read through this very briefly and real quick because I'm into an hour now and my time is getting away from me. So it says in Genesis chapter 10, now these are the generation of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madea, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, those Jews over there, and Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, we see Rome, and Dodenum. By these were the islands of the Gentiles divided into their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations. There was a split. Shem went one way, Ham went one way, Japheth went another way. Japheth went into Europe. He went into the colder climate. And the sons of Ham were Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan. Do you see that, brothers and sisters? And the sons of Ham. Ham is a black progenitor. Ham is the progenitor of Cush. We just read Cush means what? Black. So, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim. Mizraim is who? Egypt. Egyptians are black. And Put and Canaan. Canaan is the land that God gave unto Abraham and his seed. Abraham, they had a son. Ham, they had a son. His name was Canaan. Canaan was black, and he produced a land after himself, the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan which flowed with milk and honey, which was the promised land God gave to Israel, to his people. So we see that there. So all you're dealing with is, and the sons of Ham, black, Cush, black, and Mizraim, black, Egyptians, and Put, black, and Canaan, black. All you're dealing with is black. So when you open up the Bible to the book of Genesis, the first thing you see is black. The Bible deals with blackness, but you pork chop eating pastors in church, you want to not talk about race, ethnicity, and color and nationality. You want to hide this thing and say it ain't got nothing to do with color. Even when we get to Yahusha, when we get to the color of Christ, you even deny that and you spiritualize it. If I say it's raining cats and dogs outside, I'm not saying that cats and dogs are falling from the clouds. I'm saying it's raining very heavy outside. I'm using what would be called maybe an simile. I'm using an allegorical statement. I'm comparing something to something. So when we get into the Messiah and we read these scriptures here that talks about his hair and his head was white as wool, it is comparing. It is making a comparison to the head and the hair of Yahusha being compared to a lamb, that it was white and it was woolly. And his feet as if they burned like brass in a furnace. Dark complexion. This is not a glorified body. For those of you that can't understand and can't read, he is describing, he is using something to compare something. I don't know which one it was. I don't know if it was Brother Dante Forson or Teo Ministries, but one of these brothers did an excellent job with breaking down all of these different pronouns and similes, and he talked about it on a childlike version so you can understand the comparison I just gave. He did an excellent job. It's raining cats and dogs. So the scripture here, they're using a lamb's wool to describe the texture and the color of Yahusha's hair. They are using here brass as if it was burnt brass in a furnace to the complexion of Jesus' skin. So if his feet was brass, his feet, his legs, his thighs, his hands, his skin had to be the same brass bronze complexion. All right. And we're going to get into that more. I'm jumping the gun here, but so that we're dealing with Noah right now, his family lineage, his family tree. So we see that the children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram, and the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash, and Arphaxad begot Selah, and Selah begot Eber, and unto Eber were born two sons, the name of one Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begot, I don't want to go into all of that right there, but basically what you see here, this is the line that Jesus comes from. Jesus comes from the line of Shem, and the Israelites come from the line of Shem. We do not come from Ham, who is the father of the Africans. We do not come from Japheth, who is the father of the Caucasians. So the only progenitor that is left for the Israelites and for Yahusha is Shem. Shem is the father of the Israelites, of the Negro race people. All right, so we got that. Moving on, I want to move into different features here. This is a color issue that we're dealing with, and I'm going to be wrapping up. I might have to do, a part 2 of this because this is so deep. It's so much reading and it's so much to go into. So I have brought and presented you scholarly work and examples in history and geography and landmarks that you can see that the Bible is a black history book, even though the Europeans they brought us over here to the Americas in slavery, and they tried to whitewash all of our history away from us. They took our culture, they took our linguistics, our language, they took our arts away from us. They told us, forget your name. Every name had Yah or El at the end of it. Forget all of that. It was whitewashed away. The Bible has preserved our history as a people, our culture, our race, our heritage, our nationality has been preserved in the Bible. The Bible is a black man's history book. And we see here when we get into Lamentations. Lamentations says here, chapter 4, verses 7 through 8. I'm going to be reading to you a little bit here dealing with scripture. So I want you to see this here, because now I'm about to start getting into color. Somebody said, well, color isn't in the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk about color at all. Foolishness. Bible does talk about color. And the reason I keep saying this over and over again, color is for identification. It was so that you could know we people over here in America and scattered across the four corners of the earth, the diaspora, that we are the chosen people of God according to the curses and the blessings that are in Deuteronomy chapter 28, not those Ashkenazi people. So color had to be a sign of identification so you know who the chosen people are. So when you get here to Lamentations chapter 4, verse 7 and verse 8, you see where it says, her Nazarites, talking about the children of Israel, the Israelites. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. That is speaking there of their righteousness. Their righteousness. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy. Now it is talking about their skin complexion. They were more ruddy in body. You see that? They were more ruddy, more darker in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. In these pictures here, I'm showing you rubies, the dark complexion of rubies. They are comparing here, saying that the Israelites were more ruddy in body and then rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. So you see how those rubies look. So this is a description of how the Israelites look. They were ruddy and their bodies are being compared to rubies. None of this is white at all that you're looking at. None of it is Caucasian at all. Verse 8, their visage is blacker than a coal. Their image, their likeness is blacker than a coal. Here is a description again where the color of their skin is being compared to a coal, a charcoal briquette. Their visage, their image is blacker than a coal. How can you deny that the children of Israel were a black people when it is telling you here that, first of all, their skin was ruddy, their skin is being compared to rubies, their visage is blacker than a coal, their skin is being compared to a charcoal briquette, and it says they are not known in the streets, their skin cleaveth to their bones, it is withered, it is become like a stick. So back then, during the famine, during the siege, if you were already dark and you were going through a famine, you were really dark. You really blackened up. Your skin really looked like it was black, as if it was burned in an oven. And let me read here what the author says right here, Elijah J. Israel, on that subject. When he deals with this, he says, in the writings of the prophet Jeremiah, the true depiction of Israel's color is articulated. In the book of Lamentations, it is written, her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was a sapphire. In these verses, the words purer than snow and whiter than milk refers to righteousness. Right? Refers to righteousness. Not the color of Israel's Nazarites before iniquity became rampant. Their complexion was healthy or ruddy. But because of sin, God began to bring hardships such as famine upon the people, which caused their complexion to change. verse 8 reads, their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick. In the next chapter, the cause of the Israelites' darkened skin is explained. In Lamentation chapter 5, it reads, our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. It didn't say white. They could have used the word white if they wanted to use the word white. 3 times their skin is being described as black. So stop this foolishness again with olive skin, that the Israelites were of an olive skin. They were Middle Eastern. They had olive skin. No, they did not. They were not Middle Eastern. They were African, Northeast Africa. They were in Northeast Africa and they had black, dark skin. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Blackening of skin is what transpires in times of famine among the darker races. But in order for blackness to occur in the skin, an individual has to be of a darker complexion. Jeremiah's sorrowful account of Israel's suffering and lamentation is not the only scriptural evidence that supports the premise of Israel being black in color. All right, before I end on this note, dealing with the Messiah, I've got to deal with this one right here. Yeah, I told you it's a lot of reading right here I'm trying to get out. I'm going to have to do a part 2 on this. Here in Dante Fortson's The Undeniable book that I'm reading, I'm telling you guys to go get this brother's book. He shows a lot of information dealing with skin color in the Bible, and I'm just going to read a few. Some of the scriptures right here in Job 30 and 30. Job said, my skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. Job 30 and 30. He is describing his skin color. Here we go in the Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. In other words, here the Solomon, he is referring to, I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar. Those tents of Kedar were black, as the curtains of Solomon were black. He says, I am black, but comely. The comparison here is being compared to the tents, which were black in Kedar, and also the curtains, which were black of Solomon. Also, he says here, look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards. But mine own vineyard have I not kept. This is a Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 6. Here again, brothers and sisters, when you say the word black and colored is not in the Bible doesn't describe color at all. Yes, it does. Look not upon me because I am black. There is no other way to say this, brothers and sisters. I am black because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyards have I not kept. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. That is Jeremiah chapter 14 and verse 2. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground. Another comparison. Judah is being compared to the ground, which is black. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground. And the last one I want to end. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Lamentations 5 and 10. Our skin was black like an oven where it just burnt because of the terrible famine. So there's so much more, brothers and sisters, when we get down to this teaching. I want to end on Yahusha. I want to end on this note. Away with all of you bishops, pastors, teachers, preachers that read the book of Revelations and you look at the book of Daniel where it gives a description of the Most High, the Son of Man. And you say, well, that's spiritual. That's because he's in a glorified body. The Bible compares so many times the woolly hair of the Egyptians, the woolly hair of the Israelites. It compares, if you just look at the hieroglyphics and you look at the kinkiness, you look at the hair designs, you look at the knots, the twists that are in the Egyptians' hair. That is a kinky, woolly hair people. And Christ is compared to a woolly hair and a dark-skinned people like the Egyptians and the Israelites, his skin tone, his complexion. So it says, hair like wool and feet like fine brass. Probably the most telling indication of the color of Israel is in John the Revelator's description of Jesus' hair, texture, and skin color. John writes, his Jesus' head and his hairs were white like wool. This is quite different from many of the inaccurate portrayals of European images of Jesus, which depicted the Messiah as having flowing, long, straight blonde or light brown hair. When describing Jesus' skin color, John indicates that Jesus was and is dark-skinned. Feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. It is true that Israelites are a black people, but to profess that all people who are black in color are the same would only add to the inaccuracies that this work was created to dispel. Israelites and Hamites, Egyptians, they are not the same people. Africans, they are not the same people just because of the color of their skin. The Israelites, who the Bible supports as being black in color, derived not from Ham, the progenitor of the African races, but from Shem. Out of Shem came Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. This is how the nation of Israel began, which for many generations was one black nation surrounded by many other black nations. These black nations were all separate and distinct, one from another. The motivation behind the exposure of this inaccurate portrayal of Israel is not based on an ideological agenda. Rather, color is significant because it aids in the identification of the true Israelites, a black people who are also cursed. I wanted to go into the next chapter that dealt with a people cursed by God, but I'm going to pick that up in my next teaching series, where I will talk about cursed is everyone that hung on a tree, and how Christ is a black man because he was hung, he was lynched on a tree. I know you guys like to use the word crucified on the cross, but when it comes down to it, Christ was lynched and hung on a tree. But the Bible says, cursed is everyone that hangeth on the tree. The black race, the black man has been cursed because we identify with Yahusha, with our Savior, our Lord, and our Redeemer, because he was also a black man with woolly hair and black skin, and he was lynched on a tree. Come on here, Yasharel. All praises and glory and honor to the Most High God. Yasharel, we give praises to God because Yahusha was a black man with woolly hair and black skin and negroid features just like us, who were lynched in the thousands to the millions upon trees. They only got recorded in history 4,000 hangings that's recorded, but I tell you what, during the 400 years of slavery, those lynchings and hangings were in the millions with our people. But Israel, I'm going to bring you back part 2 of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And I will bring you another one. God bless you. I love you guys. Yasharel, be blessed in all you do. May the Yahshua's favor be upon you. His hand be upon you. And I will bring you another video. God bless you. Shalom.